How does man become truly free? There is only one answer to this question. Most people believe that freedom is in the liberty to do whatever one pleases at any given time and at any given moment of the day. Yet this definition is not the true meaning of being free in of itself, to be free. Instead, it is a definition or an excuse for irresponsibility, to have no self-control, no discipline or integrity towards yourself and your fellow man. But ultimately, it is to view mindlessness even as the highest good and the highest expression of man. To give oneself over willingly to the possession of outside energies and influences. This individual is far and very far from being free. Yes, they have the free will to do what they want, but they are not free from bondage. You may choose what you wish and want to do in your life. God grants us the free will to do so, but that does not mean you are free from the bondage and entanglements that develop from dancing with the devil. To be free is to be free from bondage, yet so many people believe that freedom is to instead be bound to temptation, without even realizing it, to be under the drunken, you could say, spell of unconscious temptation, without second thought. What is miraculous, though, is that this is all under the grace of God, for He has not damned us to any strict laws of behaviour. We are not in chains to Him. We have our free will. He has granted us free will. But He makes the truth self-evident through our inevitable actions as human individuals. This is where the great test of His truth presents itself to us. For if we want to be free, we can only be free through Christ. For He never chose to be bound to anything or any spirit of material life, and instead lived His life with thanks and grace in union with God. If we accept this path, we shall be free, for it is good and holy. But in today's consumer-based reality of the modern 21st century, most people are in bondage to something, to some kind of addiction, to some kind of behaviour, to some kind of bad habit, to some kind of ideology. Constructing our own matrix of how we want, or how we wish to behave and want to behave and see the world for ourselves, even if it is not the true honest reality that stares us back in the face with honesty. With this being the case, people may as well believe that true freedom is the liberty to deceive ourselves from the reality of truth, to blind ourselves from having discernment of what is good and holy. For it says in Galatians chapter 5 verse 1, "Stand fast therefore in liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yokes of bondage." In that simple verse, with such detail, it describes what being free truly means. Christ has made us free through His actions. He, the Son of God, was hated by the people for being so free that they killed Him and crucified Him. For the enemies of God wanted to muddy the waters of the transparency that Christ embodied. For a man so free in this life will always be hated by all men around him who are part of groups and ideologies. And even through psychoanalysis, Wilhelm Reich illustrated this very well with the idea of body armor. Is that Jesus presented no body armor. He had no persona. He had no ego deflections or projections onto people. He didn't project his own fantasies or reflect some sort of perception onto other people, but he saw the truth of what people were and who they were and what they truly needed. And this is why Christ was crucified, because everyone around him had body armor on. They all had their projections that they were putting onto people, and they saw Christ. Christ did not have that embodied within him because he's God himself. And therefore, because of that, they crucified him, they killed him. He wasn't part of the Roman Empire. He didn't submit to the influences of the Romans. He did not submit to the influence of, the Jews did not accept him as the Son of God and all of this. So they, through these separate ideologies and ideologies, or even what you could say, politics, through that, they crucified him and killed him. They scapegoated him through projection in a psychoanalytic lens. The true free man will always stand out as a perceived danger from those who are too cowardly to be free of their own entanglements. Too cowardly to be free from their own attachments and bondages to the world. Because if you are in bondage with something, if you are entangled with something, you are not free. You cannot act freely in this world. Because you are in connection with something. You are in a codependent relationship with something else of this world. Unless all men follow the word of God through Christ, this will be a forever burdening reality, that there will always be people used as innocent scapegoats of this world. For man lacks the tenacity to stand free and alone with God. And ultimately, this is not just only in reference to addictions, bondage through addictions, through things of this nature, but it is in bondage to group identities, mass group identities, and what we have now, which is identity politics, creating identities around political spectrums. Jesus Christ represented himself through the union with God as being outside of all these things, as being outside of the box. And if you are outside of the box, people perceive that as dangerous. Even they say evolutionarily, they're like, well, if you're not part of a group, then you're seen as some sort of threat. So this is the issue that we face. Now, if you feel like this even for yourself is something that you're struggling with, if you feel like you are in bondage to something, then I do one-on-one coaching with people who are suffering from things like procrastination, but of course, obviously, the things that are more in-depth than just procrastination, things to do with anxiety disorders, things to do with addictions, things to do with all of these things in which we can be bound to in the material world. So if you want to jump on a free one-on-one coaching call with me, you can do so. You'll find the link at the top. You can find the link in the top link in the description of this video, and you can book in a free consultation call with me where we can go through all the details of what you want to work through, and if we are compatible in that sense to go ahead with something that's going to be successful for you. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, you found it enlightening, and I will speak to you in the next one.